Greetings, everyone, and welcome to SpaceWeek Live, episode 137 on this Sunday, October 30th, 2022, the day before Halloween, if you observe that sort of thing. So, if you have any questions, as always, please make sure to write them in the chat and tag my name at rawspace so that we are sure to see them. And I'll address the questions at the end. All right, getting into the events of the last week. Oh, that didn't work. There we go. Last Sunday, the Russian Progress 80 cargo spacecraft departed the International Space Station, laden with junk and bound for a fiery re-entry over the ocean. Whee! As you may be aware, the SpaceX Cargo Dragon, or the Dragon 2 Cargo, is currently the only cargo spacecraft that visits the station and then lands intact. All other cargo craft are loaded with trash and then deorbited. Last Tuesday, there was a partial solar eclipse over Europe and Western Asia. At its maximum point in Russia, 82% of the sun was covered. Here's a gorgeous shot by Anas Saeed, taken from Pakistan. Of course, one should never look directly at the sun's photosphere, the really bright part, so solar glasses or indirect viewing methods were needed. Also on Tuesday, a Russian Soyuz 2.1A lifted off from Baikonur in Kazakhstan with the Progress 82 cargo spacecraft bound for the ISS. I don't even recall if we were able to see the Korolev cross on this launch. Did we show the... oh yes, lately they've been doing, last few years they've been doing rocket cam footage during the ascent. I'm not sure if NASA includes the Soyuz rocket cam, but the Roscosmos broadcast certainly does. 117.85, first stage separation, okay. No stuck boosters this time. Although it launched from Baikonur, which is the optimal latitude for speedy rendezvous with the space station, it took its time getting there, arriving about 2 days and 1 hour later. This is viewing its approach from the Soyuz docking cam. I mean, the progress docking cam. Then last Thursday, SpaceX launched another batch of 54 Starlink satellites from Vandenberg in California.
T-minus 15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engines full power. And liftoff. Go Starlink. Go Falcon 9. Go Starlink.
Vehicles pitching downrange. M1D chamber pressure is nominal.
And here's the booster landing.
Stage 1 landing burn.
And there you can see on your left-hand screen, the landing burn has begun on this booster. Let's watch as it touches down on, of course, I Still Love You.
Landing leg deploy. MVAC shutdown.
And awesome
Stage 1 landing
view
confirmed.
of that landing. The Falcon has landed.
Good landing. And what time of day was that? I don't even know. Sunrise, sunset. I can't even remember. So, also on Thursday, NASA announced an exciting but unexpected collaboration between the Mars InSight lander, that's the one with the core driller that got stuck, and the venerable Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter spacecraft. Back on December 24th, 2021, the day before the James Webb Space Telescope launched, InSight's seismometer detected a significant Mars quake, equivalent to magnitude 4. About 1,000 of these quakes happen every day on Earth, but Mars is a quieter planet seismographically and doesn't get nearly as many quakes. Here's a sonification of the seismic data that InSight collected. Very cool. Subsequent analysis of images from Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter revealed what had caused the quake, an asteroid impact located 3,500 kilometers from the InSight lander. The crater is about 150 meters or 500 feet wide. It's estimated that the impactor bolide was between 5 to 12 meters or 16 to 29 feet across, about half the size of the meteor that exploded above Chelyabinsk, Russia a few years ago. Interestingly, they detected chunks of ice in the ejecta from the impact, which you can see here as the light-colored patches. It's unlikely that the ice came from the asteroid because the force of the impact would have utterly destroyed it. This ice was blasted out of the ground. Now, the presence of subsurface ice in equatorial regions of Mars could prove greatly beneficial to future crewed missions because ice is water, which can be turned into both water and fuel. So you've got oxygen, you've got hydrogen. You can do all sorts of things with ice. And so that is exciting news. Now, the InSight lander itself, unfortunately, is on its last legs because the Martian dust has been accumulating egregiously on its solar panels, and it's running out of power. In fact, it's only expected to, NASA is only expecting to retain communication, or to be able to maintain communication with the InSight lander for another 4 to 8 weeks. So just within the next couple of months, they're expecting that the craft will no longer have enough power from its dust-covered solar panels in order to stay alive. But it provided some valuable, fascinating, and useful scientific data as sort of a last hurrah with this asteroid impact. Now, let's see. Oh, yes. Finally, yesterday, a Long March 2D launched from Jiuquan, China, with the Xi'an 20C satellite. According to official sources, it will be mainly used for in-orbit verification of new technologies such as space environment monitoring. Apparently no sound with that video, but as usual with many of these Chinese launches, the chunks you see falling off are not ice, but they're thermal protection foam, essentially, that are intended to shield the rocket and the payload from the whims of the Chinese weather, the ambient temperature. Taking a look further back into the annals of space history, this Thursday will mark the 65th anniversary of the launch of Laika the space dog, the first animal in space, on November 3rd, 1957, aboard Sputnik 2. Laika was known by other names, but my favorite has to be Mutnik. Laika's mission was to orbit the Earth for 7 days, at which point she was to be euthanized with some poisoned food. However, as it turned out, due to the rocket's second stage core not separating properly, the thermal control system failed, and Laika expired from overheating within about 5 hours of the launch. Sputnik 2 continued to orbit for 5 more months before burning up in the atmosphere. Rest in space, Laika. Now, looking ahead to this week, let's see. Okay, so you can't see it on the screen there, but if you do consult with my calendar, which I'm linking in the chat, Raw Space Calendar, you can ignore the entry for later today for ABL Space. That is not on the schedule. I just had moved it to the end of the month as a placeholder, so that one is not happening. But tomorrow, Monday, October 31st at 3:35 a.m. Eastern, 07:35 GMT, a Chinese Long March 5B will launch the Mengtian module to the Chinese space station. This is the second expansion module to be launched to the CSS. So there's the Tianhe core module, and then there's the science module that they launched last year, and now the Mengtian module will be launched. Now, there very likely will be live coverage of this launch, but it will not be available on my channel, not only because, well, primarily because it happens in the middle of the night, my time, and I will be sleeping. So there may be another YouTube channel covering it, or you may have to hunt around for coverage on Weibo or whatever the whatever the Chinese site is that always has bootleg launch coverage, or maybe even CGTN official channels might have it. On Tuesday, November the 1st, might be a launch, a much-awaited launch of a SpaceX Falcon Heavy, that's with the 3 boosters, with the USS F-44 satellite. Now, I say maybe because although the November 1st launch date is cited on a couple of different launch schedule sites, it actually isn't mentioned by SpaceX, and I checked the Federal Aviation Administration TFRs, the temporary flight restrictions, and there is currently no flight restriction in place for November the 1st. Now, it's not uncommon for TFRs not to be issued until shortly before they become active. So, we're a couple days ahead of time here, so it wouldn't be surprising if the TFR was not filed yet or not published yet. But, so I don't know if there's been a delay. SpaceX hasn't officially mentioned anything about it. But if it hasn't been delayed, look forward to the next Falcon Heavy launch, which we haven't seen a Falcon Heavy launch in quite some time, at least a couple of years. And it'll be exciting to see another one go up. So let's see. This mission is for the U.S. Space Force, as one might gather from the name, USSF. Will deploy 2 spacecraft payloads directly into geosynchronous orbit. Now that's what this description says. Now normally satellites bound for geostationary or geosynchronous orbits are placed into a geosynchronous transfer orbit by the launching spacecraft. But apparently this time Falcon Heavy will be taking it all the way directly to its geosynchronous orbiting location, which is a little unusual. Let's see. Also on board is the military's Tetra-1 microsatellite. The side boosters, the Falcon Heavy side boosters, will land at landing zones 1 and 2 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, and the core stage will be expended. So this will not be a 3-booster landing. It will be a 2-booster landing with the core stage being expended, presumably because it needs to achieve the extra thrust in order to put the upper stage on a trajectory directly to the geosynchronous orbital altitude. On Wednesday, November 2nd at 11:25 p.m. Eastern, 03:25 UTC on the 3rd, is a SpaceX Falcon 9 launch of Hotbird 13G for Eutelsat, a TV broadcasting satellite, another one bound for geostationary orbit. This one, however, will be placed in a geosynchronous transfer orbit by the rocket, and then the satellite itself will circularize its orbit once it reaches geo, as opposed to the Falcon Heavy launch. On Thursday, November 3rd, at 12 p.m. Eastern, 1600 UTC, is a NASA media teleconference update on the Artemis 1 mission. Now, as we know, Artemis 1 was supposed to launch a couple of months ago, but they had issues with hydrogen leaks and thermal controls in the engine, and the launch window slipped, and so to head off the inevitable questions about the launch time for Artemis 1, it's currently scheduled for November the 14th. And so at just after midnight, I think 12:07 a.m. Eastern on the November the 14th. But on November the 3rd, there will be a NASA conference providing updated information on the mission. So I will provide coverage of that on my channel. Normally, I don't do media teleconferences unless they're important, and this one's pretty important. So, and now if we forward to next Sunday, November the 6th at 2 a.m., daylight savings time will be ending in the USA and presumably many other locations as well. I think in some places they already ended their daylight saving time. Maybe the UK. There's like a week difference in when they start and stop their daylight savings. But in any case, what this means is that clocks will be rolling back 1 hour. So from 2 a.m., clocks will roll back to 1 a.m. and they'll relive 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. And Eastern Daylight Time will become Eastern Standard Time. And whereas currently we are here in the Eastern Time Zone, we're in GMT -4. We will become in. Let me say that a little more gracefully. The new GMT offset will be GMT -5. So you'll see 5 hours difference between the GMT or UTC time and Eastern Standard Time in my schedule listings. And then a few hours later, also next Sunday, November 6th, at 5:50 a.m. Eastern, 10:50 UTC, is the launch of a Northrop Grumman Antares rocket with the Cygnus NG-18 SS Sally Ride cargo spacecraft to the International Space Station. Now, this will be launching from Wallops in Virginia. And so if you're in the mid-Atlantic states anywhere, you might get a chance to see it. This being a pretty early morning launch, it might look pretty awesome as it rises up over the sunrise and the exhaust plume gets illuminated by the rising sun. Now it's going to arrive in 1 or 2 days after that, but that extends beyond next week's SpaceWeek, and so I will cover that next week. And so that is about it for the coming week. I want to take a moment to thank our channel supporters and invite you, if you're interested in this kind of content and you enjoy this sort of thing, feel free to express that however you wish. Options are available in chat. There's Patreon, PayPal, a merch store. Also, if you have any merch ideas, I'm always interested in what people want. You know, I'm interested in providing goods and services that are in demand. So if you have any interesting merch ideas, please fire them my way. And probably the best way to do that would be to put a message in the suggestions channel in Discord, which I'm linking in the chat right now. Okay, let me get to your questions. Do we have... All right. Julian Roberts, did SpaceX lose a fairing to the sea, or was it destroyed on returning to Earth? So normally, fairings, payload fairings, which are the sort of clamshell, the nose of the Falcon 9 rocket that open up, fall away, and then fall back to the Earth. They wouldn't burn up because they're not nearly going orbital speeds. They fall off of you know, basically in the tenuous upper atmosphere once it's there's no longer enough air pressure to pose a danger to the payload, and they just fall back into the ocean. Now, in previous years, SpaceX has tried to catch the two halves of the payload fairing on giant 200-foot nets on ships that would chase the fairings around and try to catch them. They had limited success with that, and they stopped trying to do that because I think it was just too difficult to get a good catch. And I think they also found that the salt water from just letting the fairings parachute down into the water didn't damage them to the point where they couldn't be reused, because at least as of a few years ago, the fairings were about $6 million each. Or I don't know if that was for a pair or for each individual one, but costs have probably come down because of economies of scale. But in any case, typically SpaceX fishes the fairings out of the water now. And I'm not aware that they lost any fairings, but it is possible. Maybe a parachute didn't deploy or something. I'm not sure. But all right. Scanning chat for additional questions. Mark Desire could have seen the eclipse if there had been no clouds. Yeah, clouds are a major problem to viewing astronomical events. It's so frustrating and stupid sometimes, because like you've got this whole beautiful universe up there, and a few dozen miles of atmosphere in between us and the rest of the universe, and a few thousand feet of potentially clouds blocking our view of everything. I often tell the story of my aunt and uncle who traveled to Europe and to Hawaii for 2 different solar eclipses, total solar eclipses, and each time the skies were partly cloudy, but then shortly before the eclipse, the sky clouded over and they were unable to see it, which is ridiculous. That's just like nature slapping us in the face. But it is what it is, and clouds are going to cloud. Fortunately, we do have live streams and other people's viewpoints that or vantage points that have a good view of the events that we can see online. Mark Desire, a Mars quake caused by an impacting asteroid sounds like a smashing sci-fi movie. Yes, it does. Pun noted. Mark Desire, hopefully none of the insulating material on the Chinese rocket launch falls on the rocket itself. So the issue on Columbia, the Space Shuttle Columbia 2003 that broke up on reentry, was that a piece of foam from the big orange external fuel tank fell off and smashed into the wing leading edge of Columbia, because the wings stuck out from the orbiter a significant distance. The insulation panels falling off the Chinese rockets, they don't really have anything to hit. The rocket is essentially just a cylinder, and the only thing they could possibly really hit would be, like, I don't recall the specific form factor of the rocket that is being referred to, but if there are any little fins on the very bottom edge of the first stage, potentially they could be impacted. But I'm not aware of any Chinese launches having failed because of insulation foam impacting rocket fins. So I don't think that's really an issue. Mark Desire again, there have been only 3 Falcon Heavy launches so far. That is correct. We've only had 3. Starman in 2018, and then it was a Arabsat and one other. It was a nighttime one and then a daytime one, and hopefully we'll get one on Tuesday, but we'll see. All right. MVM Motovlog Music asks, regarding the Artemis presser, do you figure good news or bad news? I figure informative news and maybe some. Well, see, it's not really like NASA to backpedal or hem and haw or whatever you want to call it to dodge the hard questions. NASA is all about what are the facts and what is the actual situation. Maybe if it were a contractor, Northrop Grumman or Boeing or one of those guys, they'd be like, yeah, well, whatever, blah blah. But NASA has always been very straightforward with providing the unbiased and unskewed, bare facts of a situation. And so I imagine what they're going to tell us is the progress that they've made in addressing the leaking issue, maybe reinforcing their confidence in the thermal regulation system in the engines, as well as verifying their target launch date, which is currently set for November 14th. But obviously, I don't have the details that NASA has, but I'm expecting that it will be tentatively good news, looking for a launch on November 14th. So I guess we'll see when it happens. All right. Looks like that's about it for this week. Thank you all so much for coming. Keep it raw, keep it spooky. Have a good Halloween, a great Halloween. Halloween? Did I say Halloween? Oh my gosh. And until next time, take care. Bye-bye.